Guys, I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast none other than General Michael Flynn, retired Lieutenant General, former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, served as President Trump's national security advisor. He's also been leading a tour in a bunch of parts of the country, the Reawaken Tour. And we're going to do a couple segments with him, but in the second one, we're going to talk about his new book. It's a children's book. It's called The Night the Snow Monster Attacked. By the way, you can follow General Flynn on Truth Social at TrueGenFlynn, F-L-Y-N-N. General Flynn, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you. There's so much going on in the country. I don't quite know where to start, but maybe I'll just start by having you give your assessment of where we are. Many of us came of age in an America that was certainly, fraught with controversy, and there were debates between the parties, but it seems like we're now in a new place. Do you agree with that assessment? And how would you take stock of where we are now as a country?
Yeah. So first of all, Dinesh, I just want to say thank you for everything that you do for the country. Your voice is amazing, and for those that haven't seen it yet, I'm sure most of your audience has seen 2,000 Mules. That was an extraordinary piece of honesty about our election systems in this country. And I do appreciate your patience having me on, and I'm blessed to be able to be on your show. I would say that so let's just talk globally for a minute, if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to the domestic picture, the domestic landscape. And we can talk any level of detail that you want. But globally, there is a new alliance forming globally. And that alliance is principally between China and Russia. But there are new members of that alliance that were at least century-old allies and partners of the United States of America. And one of those allies is France. Another ally would be the Saudi Arabia. Other partners that existed in around the world are other nations that are now starting to, particularly in case of Brazil, are now starting to really align themselves with this new. I would just call it a communist socialist shift in the world. And this, for those that are not paying very close attention, although I know you cover a lot of this, China is the leader in a peace deal between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran. And nobody's been paying any attention to Yemen, but the war in Yemen, which was being fueled by Iran, has subsided almost to the point where they've gone to, I would call it a ceasefire in some regards. And that's been negotiated and affected by the Chinese. And now the Chinese have the Saudis, who have been at least a century-old partner of the United States of America. They are now in basically a peace deal with the Iranians. So that's number one. The second thing is that President Xi went to visit with Putin about a month ago, and you probably talked about this. In fact, I believe that you did. And they essentially signed one of the largest economic and military partnerships that literally in the history of their two countries, and probably in the history of the world, given the size of those countries. And Xi has already communicated with Zelensky in Ukraine. And my belief, because we're not winning the war in Ukraine, we're losing the war in Ukraine, I sense that the Chinese are going to give an ultimatum to the Ukrainians and not even care two whits about what the Biden administration says or doesn't say. And we will likely see some type of shift here in the coming months toward some type of negotiated settlement. If we do not, then the likelihood of moving toward the potential for a nuclear war, which I hate to even say, I hate to even use that word nuclear, but there's been more talk about nuclear arms and nuclear strikes than I've ever heard in my life since really as a young person, as a young kid, since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that's on the global landscape, and I'll just jump to Taiwan briefly, because the Chinese continue to encircle and continue to take over the sea and air lines of communication around Taiwan. as well as the economic, the economic conditions and elements that are promulgated by Taiwan, as well as Japan too, to a degree. And then, of course, for anybody that's paying real close attention to the South China Sea, some of the things that the Chinese have been doing, not just for the last few years, but for the last probably 20 to 30 years. So it's a very, very dangerous geopolitical landscape that we face right now. And the United States, the weakness, I will say the pathetic weakness coming out of the White House is part of that problem. When we show weakness, which we have done, particularly in the war in Europe, and we allow for lies and deceit and deception to cross the airwaves instead of the honest truth, then we have the real potential that we are going to find ourselves at war. So I won't go into there's other details about Africa, about China's One Belt Road Initiative, all the things that the Chinese are doing, but it's a very, very dangerous foreign landscape, geopolitical, geostrategic landscape. But let me jump to the domestic landscape, if you don't mind.
Well, let's take a pause. When we come back, we'll do just that. Back with General Michael Flynn.